welcome back to the Let's Talk About Things podcast. This is episode 9, and it's December. It is Christmas season. Yes, we have our lights up. We have a snowflake, a little nativity scene. We're getting festive.
Yeah, this nativity scene was from before we were born, and it used to play music, but it doesn't. Huh. But yes,
yeah,
the importance of Christmas. So
yep. So it is Christmas around here. Hopefully y'all are starting to enjoy the season. Hopefully you're not too, flustered and frazzled, and hopefully you're taking time to actually enjoy the season. But if you are feeling a little like burned out and things like that, that's kind of what we're here to talk about today. Lacey and I were having a conversation recently about kind of the hustle culture and burnout, and how that seems to really rear its ugly head in Christmas time. So we just kind of wanted to have a conversation about that today. As far as burnout in your life, where have you felt it the most?
it's been more recently, I think. I think everyone goes through different seasons of life where they feel burnout at different stages, because burnout can be in your personal life, it can be especially in work, depending on what you do. But for me personally, and very recently, the past several months has been kind of both. It's almost like my energy was just running on fumes for so long that it was more of it took away my personality. It took away who I was. It took away the happiness, and I didn't feel any motivation to be doing anything.
You stop caring. You're just, at least when I've experienced burnout, you just don't care. You're like,
yeah,
you just don't care about, what happens to your job, or, whatever it is that you typically care about. You just stop caring.
And it's almost like, and even when I talk about this with close friends and like you and our family that care about me, it was more of they were like, are you okay? Lately you've just been a little off, like what's been going on? And it wasn't off in terms of snippiness at all. It was just quiet. I mean, it was straight. I was tired. Even if I got enough sleep, essentially, it still just wasn't, I didn't care. And I'm still working through it. I still feel like it's still lingering a little bit, but as you know, I'm still working through that funk. But I do think it comes in seasons, especially when you get older and in the world that we live in, with how much is put on our shoulders with finances, debt, trying to build a family, trying to make sure you take care of yourself at the same time. It's overwhelming. And I know a lot of listeners and viewers can relate to us, because we're all human. We only can give so much until we're finally burned out and we're just running on straight fumes.
I think sadly burnout is common. It shouldn't be. It's not normal. But it's common today. I think we were having a conversation with someone recently, and they were asking us, like, hey, theoretical question, like, do y'all have any goals right now? Like, any big goals you're reaching towards? And I think we both pretty immediately were like, no, not really. I'm just kind of cruising right now. I'm just kind of enjoying life, taking it as it comes. And it started the conversation of, some people feel like if you don't have a goal, if you're not striving for something at all times, you're like lazy or unmotivated.
Mm-hmm.
Or
well, and that's exactly what they have. At least from my experience growing up as a kid, and I'm sure others can relate, we were always taught, work hard, play hard. Like, work hard, work hard, work hard, go to school, get these degrees, make sure you start a family, make sure you have your kids. And it gets to a point where the again, society, it always goes back to the societal norms, but I truly think society and social media has caused us to constantly compare, constantly feel like we are not enough, or that we're behind because somebody else is getting a house, getting married, getting engaged. And it's easy to do that. We're normal, it's human, but sometimes I think when people are doing everything they can to work hard at their job, to be there for their family, be happy, try to be there, try to be content, especially people that are also trying to be positive. They're not necessarily negative Nancy's, but they're trying really hard. I think those people get burnout even more because they're trying to look towards the light when everything around them seems to be so dark. And for me personally, that's exactly how it felt these past few months. Was I was just running on straight fumes. I felt alone. And even though I knew I wasn't, it was almost like my body was operating without me now. It was almost like I was no longer, it's weird to even compare it to this, but I was just kind of like outside my body, just kind of letting it do its thing. I wasn't really caring. And yes, I travel so much, so that puts a lot of stress on me as well. I'm constantly in hotel rooms. I don't have my own space. You know, it gets onto you at some point when you're like, wow, I have nothing left to give.
I call it autopilot, and I used to experience it a lot when I was still practicing law full time, especially at one job I had where it was like that, where you traveled all the time. Sometimes I'd get out of depositions 9 or 10 o'clock at night. Wasn't uncommon. I remember that happening on Valentine's Day. Like, you find yourself so absorbed in your job or whatever it is that's burning you out that you just, in order to keep going, you kind of shut off the human parts of you, and you're more robotic so that you can get through it, so that you can just go through the motions. And you have to really stop and ask yourself, like, why am I doing this? Am I happy? Like, what is the point of all of this?
Well, the wake-up call for me especially, and that's exactly right, that's how I felt. I remember, because I texted you one day and I was like, man, something's off. Something is wrong. I didn't even have the motivation to really, even while I was at work, I remember I would look at my computer screen, all these emails were coming in, and I just did not care. I did not care to answer the emails. And not to say I don't care about my job, because I do enjoy it, but I was so busy trying to be successful and trying to do so well that it consumed me. And I started to notice when I started to notice that something was wrong, was I didn't really care to read my scripture anymore. I was kind of hitting a wall. And I know a lot of people say, well, Lacey, I tend to be like a hot and cold Christian, and I tend to, I sometimes get in these funks, and I'm like, that's normal though. But nobody talks about that. No one talks about sometimes, just like Jesus did when he went off to be alone, a lot of times it's him wanting you to just be still, just be quiet. But for me, when I didn't really care to read and I just had no energy, I would come home and I wasn't even hungry. I was so tired, I wasn't hungry. I wanted to just go to sleep. And when it started to impact even the way I would talk, I couldn't form sentences. My sentences were very patchy. And it gets to the point, I think, for a lot of people, especially some of my friends that have talked about this, it stems a lot from people pleasing, a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, most of us, if not all of us, have resorted to some sort of people pleasing, because we know what it feels like to be treated disrespectfully. So you don't want to do that to other people, but I did too much. I was saying yes, 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 yes to too many things in my life. And I was like, all right, something's wrong. So I finally, there was like a little spark in me that was like, you know what you have to do, reach out to the right people, go get help, and hopefully will get me on the right track. But I think the reason why we're talking about this, and I think it's so important right now, especially because around the holidays, there's that holiday stress. There's the who's buying what for Christmas, who's going where for Christmas, who's doing this, who's doing that, and it just gets really heavy. And I wanted to talk about this, especially during my season right now where I'm feeling a little burned out and I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, because I wanted people to see and actually hear what I'm feeling right now. Because when you look back in hindsight, 2020, you're like, oh gosh, I remember I used to do this, I was doing this. But when you're actually going through it, it's so different. And I'm trying to explain it to people other than it's okay and these seasons won't last. I have to believe it's not going to last.
Well, and I think everyone experiences burnout differently, and fortunately you're smart enough to kind of recognize, that you're getting burnout, and the steps you have to take. When I hit burnout at, I think, 2 jobs ago.
Yeah.
I can't remember now, but I was in a very different headspace. I was going, and this is very common amongst attorneys. There's actually like whole seminars they give on it. Like, we don't want to appear weak, so we don't admit that we're struggling, and that's common to any type A, motivated personality. So I didn't want to admit, man, this sucks. I'm having a hard time. So it took me hitting rock bottom with my physical health. Like, I was getting sick all the time, and I distinctly remember the day I got dressed for work, and I could not walk out the door. I just had a massive, what I know now was a panic attack. I'd never had one in my life. Had a panic attack right then and there, and quit my job that day. Like, it was just that, and you don't want to get to that point where you've let it go.
But some people, honestly, they get to that point and they keep going. I mean, there are some people, I know our listeners and our viewers are sitting there saying, well, I have no choice, it's just me, or I'm a single mom, or no one's going to do it for me. And it's hard. I mean, life is not easy. I've always said, choose your hard. But I don't think people understand. In our society, it's not okay to be so burned out that you can't even function physically. Like you said, you don't want to eat. I mean, when it starts impacting your body and it starts impacting the way that you're sleeping and the way that you're going about your day to day, as much as it's hard to say, well, there's no other option, I can't do anything else, this is the job, I have bills to pay, I get it.
Been there.
But at the same time, when is it enough? Like, look at your family, look at what's going on around you, look at yourself first and foremost. Are you getting pulled away from, one, Christ, at least in my opinion, but two, honestly, what's going on with you? It takes away your soul almost. It takes away that happy, joyful part of you. And that's when I started to notice it. And I didn't want to reach out because I think most people don't want to sound like they're complaining, or they don't want to sound like they are being a baby about it. And exactly. And I tried to push past that. I tried to say, okay, well, maybe you're just tired. Maybe it's just been a few long weeks.
There's tired and there's burnout.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. And I know what you mean when you said you looked at all the emails coming in and you just didn't care. And before I had that drastic panic attack day, quit my job on the spot moment, I remember sitting at my desk most days, looking at the emails, looking at all my cases, and no longer caring. And that scared me, because I was like, I've always cared about my clients. I've always cared about my cases, and my law license is on the line. If I don't care, you can get disbarred. And like, if you let cases just slide. So I knew, I was like, I got to do something, because I worked way too hard to just lose my law license because I'm burnout. And that's just one example. That's career burnout. That's often where you see a lot of burnout, but I think burnout can just happen with life.
But like, just listening to that though, like, a lot of people, we get so stressed out because sometimes we may be able to catch that we're burning out, or we just exist basically in autopilot. But a lot of people, we have no other choice. We live in a world where we have to make money. We have to live. Mm-hmm. And I think this is where I wanted to bring this in so bad, because I wanted to discuss that, okay, burnout is very normal, and it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be, first and foremost.
It's typical.
It's very typical, and it's common to go through it. It's not rare for people to feel like they have just spent every last bit of themselves. But there are ways out of it, because I feel like people tend to think, I'm stuck, there's no way out for me, and then maybe they go a route they shouldn't.
Yeah, we're not saying quit your job on the spot like I did. That was a very drastic day in my life. So I don't recommend not having, because I had no financial backup. I was just jumping off a cliff like in that moment, but that's a whole other sermon. But like Lacey said, there are ways out of it, and we were talking about it recently. It's biblical. I mean, Jesus was one of the most busy, when I say bothered people, like people were always bugging him. Like people were just crowds of people always, like he was overwhelmed all the time, probably stressed a lot. And I think in gosh, I wrote it down somewhere, but I think it's in Luke, where it talks about Jesus often withdrawing to the wilderness to pray. Like, he often did this. It wasn't just something he did like once in a while. He often got time to himself, withdrew to the wilderness, prayed, kept close to God, took time away from all the crazy. So I think that's hugely important.
It's so beautiful that he did that, because one thing that happened to me actually this past week, I traveled to Houston, and if those of you that have lived in Houston or you know about Houston, the traffic is absolutely patience testing. But I drove, so it's about a 6.5 hour drive one way and back. So that's essentially a 12-hour drive if you're trying to do that. But I spaced it out within a week and I traveled. But what kind of caught me was when I was driving around, seeing my customers, which again, I love what I do. I love visiting. That was what was so hard for me, was I enjoy what I do. My bosses are fantastic.
I love being an attorney.
But the workload that I was given, I was putting so much pressure on myself, because as you know, I'm very perfectionist, and I'm learning to break that down and not be so idle on that. But one thing, like you said, when Jesus went off and he wept and he had his alone time, I didn't realize, and this is a tip that I would give to people, is when you feel like you're so alone, you feel so burned out, whether this be in your personal life, giving to your family, your friends, you bit off more than you could chew kind of burnout. I'm just referencing work for just as an example, but honestly, isolate even more. And here's what I mean, because I didn't get this until God he was quiet for a while, and then he spoke to me on my drive. And I remember this because I finally got this weird smile, and like, oh my gosh, like I feel it again. I feel my spark coming back. I was driving and I was seeing the beautiful trees, beautiful East Texas, and I'm listening to my music, my gospel music, sometimes podcasts, and I realized when I was driving around and I just had a moment to look around, take breaks. I had great meetings with my customers, whom they're amazing people. I got to learn about their families even on the first meet, because I'm a gabber. But I started traveling around, and I looked at other people, and I was looking at things around me, and I was paying attention to other people, and I was like, man, I have no idea what's going on in their life. I hope they're okay. I'm going to pray for them no matter what. I started doing this just randomly, and God was like, I know you are so stressed out. I just heard him say, I know you are hurting my child. I know you are stressed out. I know you're giving it everything you have. And I turned my radio off for a good 2 hours.
That's big for Lacey.
Yeah, I love my car jams, but I turned my radio off and I drove for 2 hours. I had another client. I drove for 2.5 hours to where I needed to go, and I didn't need the music. I was so at peace, and I started smiling again, because I was like, I just needed to breathe. I needed a moment away from where I live, away from the noise, away from the chaos. And I forgot that even in college, I used to go for drives all the time, and it worried Dad sometimes where I would go because of my lake spots. But that's what healed me, was getting away, just being in isolation with him. And I just, to be honest, I started to get very emotional, because I was like, oh, I feel something again. And it sounds silly to say, but I finally felt something. And it was almost like I could breathe. It was relief again. And I went, I'm gonna be okay. This is hard for me right now, but like we believe, anything God brings us to, he'll bring us out of. But I went silent, radio silent, while driving, when, I mean, most people probably already do that, but for me, that's not normal. And I wish I could explain to people that feeling, but if you are in a burnout season, or you're in a depressed season, much like me, it's almost like you lose your spark for a bit, but sometimes you need that spark, whether that's it's burned out for a reason. You sometimes just need to let it burn out so that you can be still, isolate, go do whatever you have to do, whether you're spiritual or not. Get away from the noise, get away from the crazy, and find that spark again. And I am not lying here. It's going to take time. But I'm glad, because even though I don't feel 100 again, I don't feel quite at my best, I still know that it's coming. I have hope again. It's almost like that spark is slowly lighting again, but it took me having to go away, get out, get away from the noise, and just turn turn everything off, talk to him, and let him talk to me rather than me wanting to hear a version of what I think he would say. And I know a lot of people do that. So I mean, one of my biggest tips would be, as hard as it is, get away from the noise. Get away from it. Try to isolate as best you can.
And some people, like, I'm sitting here thinking, like, what if I'm someone and I'm saying, I can't get away from the noise. I'm a mom. I can't just walk out on my kids. You know, I'm thinking, because I'm a mom, I'm thinking, you know, I can't just say, you know what, I don't feel like momming today. I'm just going to walk out. Like, some people don't have that option. So what do you do? And for me, that looks like I have this very almost sacred time to myself in the mornings. And yes, it requires me getting up at the butt crack of dawn, but it's my hour or two where nobody else is up, nobody else is talking, no one's bothering me, and I can just do whatever I want to do, whether that's read my Bible or pray or read a book that I've been wanting to get to, or just whatever. And I think I'm also seeing this trend in like social media and just around the world where people they call it romanticizing your life.
Oh yeah,
where
that's a big
just
thing right now.
Every little thing, make it big. Like even if it's just your normal cup of coffee, like really sit there and think about
it fancy.
Yeah, make
Put
it
whipped cream
fancy.
on.
Like have it a really cool mug, or really think about the flavors. Like slow your brain down.
Life.
Like I think it's even like some sort of strategy when people are having anxiety attacks. Think of things you can
count,
see,
hear,
taste, smell.
Yeah.
So like sometimes to get your mind to slow down, you've got to like just focus on very like elementary, like basic stuff, like the temperature of your coffee, the flavor of it, like just forcing your brain to slow down. That can really, that's part of turning off the noise.
It's kind of cool full circle to see. And that's like, I mean, it's a perfect example. I mean, I don't have kids, so yeah, I don't know what that's like when you sometimes feel like you can't. But in some regards, when society and our world tends to be a little overwhelming, and we all are going through it, all of us have, not a single person living has not experienced this world and how painful it can be. But I think sometimes, and especially like I did, I lost sight for a second, and the devil got a hold of my brain, and he took it for a little while. And for me, I should have caught that, but he did it hard, because this time he made me feel like I had to keep doing more and more and more at my job, in my personal life, in my physical health at the gym, in preparation for anything that's coming up in my life, whether that's savings, paying off debt, trying to get my mental health right. It's almost like we sometimes forget. In our crazy world, we focus so much on doing more, getting more, providing more, when God said, you have all that you need, but we miss it. It's almost like we sidestep it. And like you said, with just doing the simple things, romanticizing your life, taking yourself out on a date, go buy yourself flowers, men, go take a fishing trip, go golfing, go do whatever you need to do. But we forget about that because it's not common in our society to take time for yourself. That's not common, or it's starting to, I think, in our culture now. We've all
Thankfully,
had enough.
I'm seeing a shift. Yeah.
I definitely needed this, because I've seen now what it looks like when I put myself very last. And this is a different kind of last, because it's I'm completely single, so I didn't put my husband or anybody above. It was more, I put idle things above me, and God said, you're about to learn a very hard lesson, but I'm not going to leave you. And so I'm getting it back. It's slowly but surely. It doesn't happen overnight, as many of our viewers and listeners know, but like you said, I think biggest thing is find a way to romanticize, but also love yourself again.
And you have to know your limits too. Like, I mean, hopefully you don't hit burnout to the severe point that I did and had to learn your limits the hard way. But, you know, whether or not you have, learn your limits. Know the point at which your body starts to rebel, or at which your mind starts to feel chaotic. Like, and once you start learning where that limit is, that's where your boundary line needs to be set. And you need to set it and forget what anybody thinks. Like, if you know this is what's going to protect you, protect your mental health, set that boundary, know where your limit is.
That's where the people pleasing comes in, though. That's
and I didn't
really
think
hard.
I was a people pleaser,
It's hard
but
to set boundaries with people pleasing, but I actually talked to my coworker about this the other day. I said, hey, I remember, because she's the kindest soul, and she tends to people please because she's so kind that she didn't want anybody to feel like, you know, they couldn't get help from her or that she wouldn't be there for them. But it was starting to take away from her joy and take away from who made her the beautiful person she is. And recently I've seen her set boundaries. I haven't said anything, but I've just visually and audibly heard it at work, and her personal life is so much better. She's starting to focus on her kiddo more. She set boundaries with our boss, and it's nice to see that, because nobody took it personally. Like we think in our head, sometimes we overanalyze what someone might think, but people pleasing is one of the biggest things for burnout. And I think that's kind of that's the kicker for burnout, is when you start to people please, because then you do it in your personal life, then you do it with your career, then you sometimes do it with people you shouldn't, and it's just a never ending cycle.
Because that's how you get ahead in most careers. That is how you get ahead, is by making the people above you happy. And at a lot of times you have to sacrifice your own happiness to do that. And it sucks that's the way the system's kind of built, but it is. And I hate that, because some people are like, well, then how am I ever supposed to get ahead at work if I don't make my boss happy? And I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I have a great answer to that. But I mean,
you can't, though. At the end of the day, you shouldn't be doing a job just to make your boss happy. You should be doing a job to do it well. And if your boss is still unhappy, then that's not your problem.
We're all replaceable at work.
Exactly like what happened with our mom. She retired. They replaced her the next day.
The lady was actually already hired before she even left.
That's what I'm saying. I think our culture, and I'm so happy and proud of our generation, we are starting to fight back. We're starting to say this is exhausting. We don't want to work 8 to 5, 9 to 5, and have no time for our kiddos. Like, this is enough. Enough is enough. And I'm proud of it, because even no matter what path it takes you to get there, and I fully recommend counseling as well if you still feel like you need help. I have a counselor. She's fantastic. But a lot of people are starting to wake up, and they're going, I've had enough of this.
Yeah, and I love seeing that, and I think that's good for people to recognize. And I think the more people that do that, the more we're going to see it not be normal for employers to work.
It's been that way for so long, including our parents' generation. Work, and then they're tired. Now they've got all kinds of anxiety, depression, stress, and they don't know it, though. They just buried it. But I mean, I think a few tips I would give to anybody that's struggling with this, and I mean this from every bit of love and heart. You have to get to a place where you say enough is enough. You set those boundaries and isolate away from what's causing the noise. Like isolate if you can. I know people say, well, I can't take a vacation. I'm not necessarily saying a vacation, but take a weekend or something where it's just you, and whether you're spiritual or not, find a way to just get away from it all, because sometimes we just allow our brains to get so wrapped up in it that we can't breathe. Any other than, because it's hard with hustle culture. It's what we've been taught to do, but like I said, I've seen a shift in our generation. I'm extremely proud of everybody. But for those of us that are feeling extremely spent, we have nothing left in our tank, other than the advice of trying to isolate and making sure that you just romanticize your life in every little bitty piece. What is something for those that say, well, I have no other choice. This is my only option. This is something I have to provide for my kids. I have to do this. What are some steps they can take other than setting boundaries and trying to mitigate people pleasing that might help? Anything from a mother's standpoint?
That is tough. Without knowing people's individual situation, that's really tough.
And it's all aspects.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, I think we're all learning to slow down as a society too. I think we're seeing more and more women go back to being stay at home. And I'm not saying you have to be stay at home or that there's anything not valuable about having a career. I'm just saying I think we're seeing the world as a whole shift its mindset, which is encouraging. But until then, what do you do? And I said, like I said before, it's kind of taking those moments out of the day to yourself, to take care of yourself. And it's truly kind of sitting with yourself and saying, like, what do I want out of life? And is what I'm currently doing furthering that, or is it just, am I just spinning my wheels?
Hamster.
Is it serving me in some way? Is it, I mean, because I was high-powered lawyer, making all kinds of money. I mean, I had, great cases. Every case was lots of commission money. I mean, to the world, I looked so successful, and I was, but at what cost? And to me, it wasn't worth it anymore. And I had to stop and ask myself, like, is this what I really want? Or is this just what I think everybody else expects of me? And I was afraid to let other people down. So sometimes that helps too, is asking yourself, am I doing this because it's really what I want to do, or because it's what I think everybody else will like me to do? And think,
is it more for a status kind of thing? I mean, and again, it's putting those idols,
because you do see like entrepreneurs who start their own business. They work insanely hard, crazy hours, but it doesn't feel like work, and they don't burn out because it is something they're passionate about and they love it. So I'm not saying working hard automatically leads to burnout. It's working hard at the wrong thing. Like if it's, like I said, for example, your business and you love it and you're passionate about it, maybe you're not going to burn out because that's what you love and it doesn't feel like work. But if it's something that maybe you're not truly passionate about, or you're doing it just for the paycheck, it's pretty easy to burn out because you hate it. You dread doing it every day. And I know not everyone can just afford to like quit their job, but maybe while you're at your current one, start thinking about what you enjoy doing, what your talents are, and maybe start thinking of other career paths. I know that's not real helpful to the person that's like, yeah, I cannot quit my job. There's no way. But if you don't start thinking about this thing now, you are going to burn out and likely, God forbid, get fired or something. Like it's gonna backfire at some point. And like we said, we were talking about Jesus. I mean, one of the most sought after people of his time. He often withdrew to the wilderness. Often, like he surrounded himself with supportive people. He picked his 12 besties very carefully. Like, he did not surround himself with people that asked too much of him or put him in a position where he would burn out. He picked these men very, very carefully. And I'm trying to think, I think there was another story I was thinking about today, like the Mary and Martha story, where Martha was just in chaos, running around trying to get everything ready, trying to make sure everything was right. She was stressed out, trying to serve Jesus and his disciples, and she was angry at her sister Mary because Mary was just kind of hanging out and chilling and enjoying Jesus. And as the eldest, like, type A personality, I often sympathize with Martha. I'm like, yeah, I'd be mad too if I'm sitting here doing all the work and my siblings just sitting there. But I've had to think about that story more and more, because I think Jesus was saying something to Martha about, like, hey, you're focusing on the wrong thing. Like, Mary's got it right. She's spending time with me. She's slowing down. She's not worried about all that stuff. You're stressed out over all this stuff you think you have to be worried about. And really, that's not what I want you worrying about. And I'm telling that story horribly, but I mean, we're not the first ones to feel the hustle. Like, it's been going on since Jesus was walking the earth. So it's been going on since the beginning of time. It'll be going on till the day we die. But I mean, I think there's ways to combat it, and I think we've both been through it. And I think Christmas season is where we see a lot of it, because everyone feels obligated to buy everybody presents. They feel obligated to go to all the activities, to do all the baking, to decorate the way their neighbors did. Like, there's so much pressure, and no one stops to think, am I actually enjoying this, or am I just doing this because I think it's something I have to do? Yeah,
their priorities shift, not intentionally, but sometimes it has to. And then sometimes the wrong priority takes point, and that's when I think the light switch goes on for burnout to happen.
How have you felt about Christmas this year? Are you feeling burnout? Are you feeling like you're going at a like sustainable pace so far?
I'm excited for our family getting together, and I'm excited to spoil our nieces, and I'm excited for that. But the thought of gathering presents and getting all that done on top of all the work I have to do and the countless traveling that I have to get done before the holidays is adding a little bit of stress.
So you're already feeling it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Because, on top of what I'm also trying to do physically with my health and try to get back on track with how I'm feeling and what my counselor recommends, I just feel like, how can I keep doing this? How can I keep going?
How can I keep up?
But I also know that Christmas isn't just about the gifts. It's not just about spoiling them with fun games or trying to get my family all the wonderful things that I know they deserve. It's more about us just being together, and that's what makes me excited. It's just hard sometimes because part of my love language is to give and to make people happy. That's something that I tend to work on, but the self-love is very much lacking, and I'm aware of that. But this holiday season, I really hope by Christmas I feel a little bit more like I'm present and I'm not focused on work. I'm not focused on anything else going on in my life other than just being present, not worrying about finances, not worrying about trying to, do well at the job and excel in this, in this year. But
well, and it's funny because you're sitting there stressed about buying all of us gifts, and I'm sitting here thinking, you could get me nothing and I wouldn't think anything of it. But you, like
That's
you said,
not me.
it's your love language. You spend time thinking about each gift for each person. You don't just randomly pull stuff off the shelf and say, here. You've thought about it, you put a lot of effort into it, you spend your hard-earned money on it. And so when you're giving a gift, you're giving a piece of yourself to that person. And so when you feel like you can't do that, you feel like, oh my gosh, I've failed in some way. But that's also, I'm not saying that's people pleasing, but I think in our minds it can feel that way. Oh, if I don't buy this certain gift, or I don't buy this many gifts, I'm going to let that person down. They're going to be disappointed. Mm-hmm. And we put all this pressure on ourselves. And meanwhile, the other person's going, I wasn't even thinking about that. I'm just glad you're here.
Yeah. And again, it just goes back to that self-love, romanticizing your life. And as much as I am working on it, there are still moments where I hit a wall and I have to go take a walk, or I just have to go sit in my car for a second, because I feel it's almost like when I go to sleep, and yes, I just got sleep, but I did not rest. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly how I could put it. It feels like, okay, I slept physically, but my body did not get the rest that it needed to recharge. It's almost like when you are constantly operating at a 5% battery, and it's about to die, but you're like, I'll give it a few more, and then you charge it to maybe 8%, and then you're like, okay, I'm good for a little bit. That's constantly how it feels. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people can relate to that, but the biggest thing for me recently on getting out of this funk and feeling that happiness and spark again was getting away from the chaos, getting away from things that are causing me a lot of triggers. They're causing me just a lot of just moments where I feel like it's not me.
And you may not have this figured out yet, but
no,
because you're going into, we're at the beginning of December, you're going into the season, you're already feeling that way. How do you plan to approach it? Because there's someone sitting there that's like, oh man, that's how I feel. I'm excited, but I'm also stressed out and freaking out. How do I approach the season? And maybe you don't have the answer just yet. Maybe you're kind of figuring it out as you go. But are you gonna maybe say, I don't know, limit the presents to what you can do, or are there things you do to help mitigate that before the stress happens? I probably just asked you 6 different questions.
I think for me, because there's no way I'm not going to provide gifts. That's going to happen, and I know that. But I'm putting I'm putting a budget, the same dollar amount for everybody. It's kind of putting me at ease for how much I know I need to spend. But at the same time, I'm also look, take work one day at a time. I think I get so overwhelmed with how much I'm traveling, and I see it on the calendar, and I want to do well for my job and for my bosses, that it starts to become almost consuming. And I don't focus on the now. I don't focus on today. I don't focus on taking care of me and breathing and taking my walks, going to the gym. So going forward with what we're doing right now for my my little season of burnout right now is self-love. So I'm trying to find ways, even when I go to the gym, to wear a cute outfit and feel like I look pretty. Or when I'm at work, maybe when you tackle, I mean, I always do this, but I make a list. When I tackle one thing at a time, celebrate that. Like, I just finished this for this customer and that was a lot and I just knocked it out. Next customer, but go take a walk first. I'm forcing myself now to take a step back, and that's very hard for me because when I get hyper focused, I have to keep going and I don't stop.
And my husband is annoyingly good at living in the present. Like, I try to learn from him, and maybe this is just a man thing in general. They have the ability to think about nothing, which blows my mind in general. But I asked him once, I was like, so, like, because we're trying to move right now, we're moving houses, like it's always crazy when you do that, and I sit there and think about, like, oh, you know, I'm stressed, what about this, what about that, and he's just sitting there completely unbothered, and I'm like, okay, explain to me why you are so unbothered. He's like, because there's nothing I can do about it in this current second. And I was like, so what? And what do you mean there's nothing you? He goes, right now, at the time, he's like, it is 9 o'clock at night. There is not a single solitary thing I can do about that specific issue right now. So right now, I'm not worrying about it. He can literally just turn his brain off until he has to worry about it. And I envy that about him because women, our brains spin.
Well, we're wired differently. I mean, we even with how we are with our kids, it's just we're wired to always be alert. And it's a beautiful thing, but it's also sometimes a negative. And like I said, I think the only thing, we can go around and beat the dead horse, but it has to come to a point where you realize, I've had enough. I've just had enough. This is not me. You're tired of living outside your body. And
robotic, autopilot.
I just got tired of that. But like I said, talk to the right people, get the help you need, but also find a way to romanticize, love yourself, and set those boundaries. Set them hard and don't undo them. Because that's the hardest part, is unlearning learned behaviors that you were taught for so long. But it's very doable. But I think burnout is when your body is telling you, hey, enough is enough. You've had enough. We can't do anymore. And I love that this culture is now shifting. So
I think
I'm excited for it because I'm glad I've gone through it, and I'm trying to appreciate the burnout rather than be so miserable about it. Change your mindset. But for some people, you got to go through it. You got to just feel it for a little bit. Let your body hurt for a little bit. You don't always have to be like, this is a great thing. You don't need to lie to yourself. But at the same time, find a way through it, push through it, do whatever it takes.
You know, a little practical thing that I had to do after burning out was I had to set times of the day where I was no longer going to do work.
Yeah, like put your phone away.
Our technology makes it to where you can work from home pretty easily. So I had to set, okay, from this hour to this hour is work time. Outside of that, I don't get to check emails. I don't get to respond to work calls unless it's a drastic emergency, which rarely happens. That's it. Like, so if you can't get away, like Lacey's saying, for long periods of time, at least set a boundary in your day where you're like, okay, this is now my family time. This is now me time. This is no longer for work. And if you've got a boss that has a problem with that, maybe you're in the wrong job.
Well, and sometimes burnout can show you people's true colors, especially when you're needing it the most. You're needing a bit of compassion and empathy. So also try your best to pay attention to who's treating you a certain way when you are at your lowest. And that's a God's gift as well.
And you may
I've seen a lot of it already.
You may say, I have a job where I can't turn it off. Lacey is probably right there with you. Like, she's in sales. Like, your phone is all the time.
Sales is actually up there with a lot of depression and suicide rates, and
so
up there with attorneys, doctors, dentists,
air traffic controllers.
Yeah, air traffic controllers. So it's like every there's always a time in life where we constantly feel like we have to do more to feel like we are enough. But I am now learning that's BS. I am happiest when I am just doing the simple things in life. And everybody knows that I love the simple things. I love going on my slow fishing mornings. I love sitting outside. I love taking walks. I like spending time with my family around the fire, the little things. And lately, I haven't done much of that because I have been so focused on work, and it has just been work.
I think something you've gotten pretty good at, though, is, and this might be a tip for somebody, is speaking up and telling people what it is you need. Like, you're pretty good about telling your bosses, hey, this is my limit. This is what I need to be successful at what I do. I'm not answering my work phone after this time. Like, you made it pretty clear right up front. Like, hey, this is what it's going to look like. And I don't think that's a wrong thing to do. No. I think you have to communicate to people, hey, this is how I expect to be treated. If they're going to, violate those boundaries, then...
Well, that's exactly when it opens the door for people to take your energy and to not respect that you're with your family, or it's time to go, it's time to log off. That can wait. At the end of the day, I mean, we're all human. We got a life to live, and we have to live it to the best of what Christ has called us to do, because eventually we're going to meet our Maker. And I don't want to look back and think I missed some of my niece's most precious moments, or my mom and dad's most precious moments, because I was so concerned about making money. I just don't want to do that anymore.
A powerful phrase that I sort of say to myself a lot is, it can wait.
Yeah.
Like, it can wait. It's like those billboards you see where it tells you no texting and driving, it can wait kind of thing. It really can. Most of the time it can. Every now and then there's emergencies with work or with life. Totally get it. But most of the time it can wait. It's a Monday problem. Like, if it's Friday after 5, it's a Monday problem. Like, don't worry about it. Enjoy your weekend. And hopefully you're in a job and an atmosphere where that's possible. If not, maybe start looking for something else. But
whatever it is, it's okay to feel like you have nothing left to give. It's okay to feel like you are not yourself right now. And it is okay to get help, and to understand that the help that you're getting is sometimes exactly what you need to come back stronger, or to move on to the next thing that God is asking you to do. And for me, personally, seeking help from my wise counsel and from people I thoroughly trust, for them to hear and see me say these words, because even I was exhibiting just behaviors that weren't me, that was when I realized, as much as I may not like this right now, God is teaching me something. I'm going to get through this. It's very painful, but it almost woke me up to say, you're not done yet. You have so much more to give. You're giving it to the wrong things, and you need to focus on you again. And it's going to be a pattern, and I warn people that it's not going to be easy, but try these tips that we've been giving throughout this entire podcast. Really try to focus on figuring out what in your life is going to bring you back that spark, what is going to take you away from the noise, and be okay with the slow process. It's not going to be immediate. Be okay with the growth, because once you get that spark back and you start to feel that love again for yourself, it's such a joyous feeling to where you almost, you needed to feel that in order to see that you don't want to get that low again. So my advice would just be everything I've said already. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, but my biggest advice is breathe, and it is okay. A lot of people tend to think that if someone's like that, it's their fault. They should have known better. They're clearly weird. They're clearly crazy. And I can't stand that. It's more of a, hey, you're doing the best you can. I'm proud of you. I'm not going to say keep going, keep pushing. I'm going to say give yourself a break, relax, take some time, come back later, come back stronger when you're ready. And I think that is actually more powerful than somebody who pushes through.
Yeah, and whether it's work burnout, life burnout, or Christmas holiday season burnout, I've heard it said, and I often remind Lacey, like, anxiety and stress is a sane response to the broken world we live in. Like, it may be typical, but it's not the normal way our bodies are supposed to operate. So, like, we live in a broken world that is constantly creating stress and chaos in our life, but we have to fight against it. And, you know, like we said, Jesus kind of showed us how to do that. He withdrew to pray. Even Elijah, gosh, I forget the chapter of the Bible, but Elijah got to this point where I think he just said, I'm done. I might as well be dead. Like, I literally think those were his words. I might as well be dead. I'm done. And then it says, and then he slept. Like, the dude took a nap and felt better. So sometimes you just might need a nap.
Definitely rest over sleep. And I hope people understand what I mean by that. Because, I mean, I've already said it 1,000 times, but you need rest over sleep. And that could be mental rest. It could be away from your family, even away from your job. But you have to you cannot pour from an empty cup.
No.
And you have to take care of yourself. And unfortunately, most of us, we forgot how to do that. But I think also burnout can be a blessing and a curse. It wakes you up. It shows you what you do and don't want. But either way, it's very normal. It happens. And I really hope people will take this and try to apply this at least a little bit every day, just a little bit.
Practice it for the Christmas season. See how you can do. Know your limits. Set those boundaries. Take care of yourself. Enjoy the teeny little thing. I know it sounds so cliche.
Of course, enjoy the little things.
Like, enjoy the little things.
Get you a coffee in the morning. Like,
enjoy it.
Go do things that make you feel like, as cheesy as it sounds, like you're in a movie.
Hallmark movie.
Like, it's okay to do that every now and then. I think our culture's just kind of pressed it for so long. But I mean, if y'all have tips, if you've gone through this and you have tips, leave them in the comments. Tell us about them, because we learn from everybody too. We learn from other people. We're human, just like everybody else. Just Jesus was human at one point. So honestly, I hope this helped. I really hope that even sharing our personal experiences with this has maybe sparked somebody's interest and gone, man, okay, I think this is my sign, or hey, I know exactly what that feels like. I need to get my health back. Something.
And one last thing I would personally leave y'all with is look up. And that might sound weird, and I mean that literally and kind of spiritually. Like, when I find myself getting, like, spiraling and going all crazy, I have to literally look up, because most of the time we're looking down at our phones and we're researching what's wrong with me. We're researching all these symptoms and we're trying to figure it out.
Social media.
Sometimes look up. Like, when's the last time you looked at a tree? I know that sounds weird, but think about it.
Take your walks. Go outside. Even if you work in an office, go take a lap.
Look up. Like, look out at the horizon. That is one of the most scientific ways to reset your biological rhythms, is to look at a horizon, because that's what we're supposed to do. We're outdoor creatures. And like Lacey said, we don't want to take too long with this topic. I think you get what we mean, but look up. Like, just look up at the world around you. Look up towards God, figuratively speaking. And you might start to feel a little better. But I hope this wasn't too depressing of a topic for Christmas.
No, sometimes
I don't think it is.
You have to talk about the hard times in order to get to the good ones. You have to. You gotta break it up.
Yeah. For some people, the Christmas season is very hard.
It's not always jolly. So. But like she said, take these tips, reach out to us. As always, you guys know you can reach us. But it's normal. We're praying for everybody. Take time for yourself, and be okay. Be okay with where you're at. Be proud. It's okay. Yeah. And if you're a book nerd like me, check out the book To Hell with the Hustle. It's a great book from a Christian perspective. It talks about all of this in depth and gives you some really good, cool examples. And we hope y'all enjoy your holiday season, and we will see you closer to Christmas for our next episode. Episode 10.
Yep. Bye, y'all.